Let's get into this one. Our guest co-host today is sharing the impact of distance learning, not only on students, but also on parents trying to balance their jobs and support their children's education at the same time. Please welcome to the show working mum, news personality Georgia Tolley is with us here in studio. GT, good to have you on board. So come on, lift the lid. I know that you have been posting honestly about all things distant learning and parenting during these challenging times. But for those with kids out there, I'm sure, who will be able to understand, but equally for those out there that don't have kids, what's the reality of distance learning at the moment?
I think it's pretty tricky, and that's a bit of an understatement. I think most parents are finding it almost impossible, trying to juggle work and then, teach their children. And ultimately, while many of the lessons might be live, with the younger ones especially, they won't just sit in front of a screen, they won't just concentrate. And so you're having to constantly oversee what they're doing. And I think every parent starts the day feeling positive and determined that they are going to, bring light and love into the whole process. By the end of the day, you're a bit of a sort of gibbering, shaking wreck. And I have to go and have a quiet lie down every single day just to sort of decompress from the whole process.
Well, Georgia, we spoke about how kids right now are going back to distant learning midway through the semester. A lot of them are facing university exams or school exams and graduating this year as well. How has that impacted? Did you see any challenges within the children's, educational kind of experience with it being so sudden and so close to the end of the year?
Yes, I mean, ultimately, I'm lucky my children aren't taking exams this year, but anyone who's, coming up to sort of 15 or 16 or heading towards those A-level and IB exams, and obviously the Indian exams as well, they have been cancelled. We just heard literally in the last few days that the IB exam is going to be cancelled, and instead the children are going to be assessed on their coursework. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge change. And can you imagine if you've been, as a student, as a child, you've been building up towards these exams, and then all of a sudden to have them sort of taken away? On one level, I bet they're thrilled because you don't have to take the exams. But on the other, how are you going to be certain that you're going to be assessed in the same way when you go on to universities on the international
Especially
stage?
Because they're actually relying on the exams to up their grades as well.
Yes, exactly. I think some people kind of flunk their mocks maybe because they don't think it's that big a deal, and for some people they're sort of mock exams are the moment when they're like, actually I really need to buckle down now. So if your grades are going to be based on those or on coursework that maybe you didn't really concentrate on, then that's going to completely potentially change your future because you're missing out on that opportunity to prove yourself in an exam.
So as Tom mentioned earlier, this is our second time really of doing distance learning. Is there anything that surprised you this time round? Positives maybe, or is it all negative?
I wish I could come up with a positive for you. It was obviously a lot was learned during COVID. When we first kicked off in COVID, it was a nightmare. No one knew how to use Zoom. None of us really knew what Zoom was. It was quite a new platform for lots of people. And then obviously the conflict started quite suddenly, and there was this sudden transition. And I would say that the first week was a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. There weren't any live lessons. There wasn't a great deal of interaction. And to be fair, everyone was slightly reeling with the situation at the moment. Then we had the 2-week break, which was brought forward, thank goodness. So they had 2 weeks of spring holiday. And then we came back and, I have to be fair, there has been a real change. There are a lot more live lessons. I would suggest that every lesson could be live, and that would have a huge impact. And so far that hasn't been the case, but you can see the situation evolving. The schools, do stay in touch with us. They're trying their best. Mm-hmm. It is still really hard for everyone. Yeah. It's hard for everyone. It's hard for the teachers, it's hard for the pupils, and it's really awful for the parents.
From that point, I mean, again, we can go back to that point that, it's easy to say that children adapt. They're very good at adapting to situations. Penny for the thought of the educators in the schools. This happened during a break where, of course, a lot of teachers have plans to get away, etc. But in terms of I think we focus a lot on the schools and the students without really thinking about the pressure it puts on parents, especially working parents as well, because you have to juggle your timetable, not just the children's.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the way we've managed it is my husband and I are dividing and conquering. If we had the two boys in the household together, that would just be a nightmare. So instead, my husband has to deal with the eldest boy while working from home, and I bring my son to work. And he either sits when I'm writing my script and getting ready for the show, he sits at the desk next to me, and then when I'm on the radio,
He disappears 3 hours.
he's in the green room and he's working hard, ostensibly, and I'll do my interview, and then in an ad break I'll skip out and see if he's doing okay. He does occasionally, unfortunately, yes, go on my phone to watch YouTube. But there's this situation where and this must be the same for any working parent, you know, you're doing your job and you're on a work call and then all of a sudden your child comes into the room. The only way to sort of stay professional is to shove a phone at them and just go watch YouTube just for a minute, please.
Is there anything that you think has kind of like helped in this time around? I know you said it's kind of like dreadful, but is there anything that you think has helped like this time round in the learning, or even just making the children more adaptable like to this situation?
Yes, definitely. So mine are now 11 and 12, and so in COVID they were like 5 and 6 or something. And they're definitely comfortable with the idea of doing a lesson on social media. They can definitely do that. And their kids are so tech savvy, horribly so. So they're absolutely fine with, you know, switching between different apps and, you know, putting their hand up, you know, through the emoji and things like that. So they have definitely got more used to engaging with their teacher through an app and through Teams or through Zoom. So there have been benefits. And of course they all know how to sort of chat to each other as well. I mean, believe me, while the class is going on, there's a whole nother stream of communication.
Because that was a bit of a concern during COVID, wasn't it? That like children weren't socialising, they weren't playing, they weren't having like these kind of their own community that they could hang out with. So do you think that's a concern this time, or do you think like technology is definitely helping aid that, you know, kind of friendship, you know, during the classroom?
So definitely the tech is helping. And then of course, it is different to COVID. So during COVID, the kids weren't allowed out. They weren't supposed to be socialising because of the infection risk. Now, of course, the moment they're not in class, we're chucking them outside, putting them on their bikes. It's still nice weather. Yeah. And some of the sports events, my children play rugby, some of the sports training is still going ahead. In fact, you know, they'll have rugby training this weekend.
Are you up at Haptor?
Yes, and that is so important, you know, because they need to get out and about and they need to be away from the screen. So they need that sport and fitness as well.
Definitely, amazing.
And Julia, if you had something to say to policymakers or schools from a parent's perspective, what would you say to them?
They're live on television.
Okay, I have had quite strong feelings about this. It is really important that all of the lessons are live, whether that is enrichment or whether it is PE or games or art. You know, don't just make the science and the maths and the English live, because ultimately school is also a way of, it's a place to put your children when you're at work. You know, they're caring for your children as well. And if they're not engaged and it's not a live lesson, most of them just aren't doing it. And so that would be my real plea. And just please, can we get them back as soon as possible?
But equally, and I think we need to make the point that, you know, you see it from all the different perspectives. Yeah, it's tough as a working mum, but equally schools, and we're going to be talking to the schools very shortly, are also facing a number of challenges at the moment. Then you've got the KHDA and the other authorities which are working closely with them. So,
I mean, it was the only decision that could be made. Like no parent would want their children within the school gates at the moment. You want them safe, you want them at home. And it was obviously a very, very difficult decision on the part of the Ministry of Education, but I think every parent in the country agrees it was the only decision. And we understand that, you know, bodies like the KHDA want the kids in as soon as possible. We know that teachers don't want this, schools don't want this, and we're just having to ultimately make the best of what is a difficult situation.
Well, Georgia, we're so excited to have you with us on the show because we're going to be delving more into this topic and we'll love your perspective on it as well, so stick around.